Oh, hello and welcome to Anxiety Hacks. Well, it's fantastic you're here to join us. I'm your host, Kate Hudson-Hall, and thank you to everybody so much for listening. So this is a platform for people to share different experiences and different ways to be able to help people with anxiety. And then some of the episodes include people that are actually really sort of in the depths of dealing with their anxiety. And I like to talk to how they have and what works for them to help to be able to cope with those really, really difficult, uncomfortable, painful feelings. And then also to professionals who work with people with anxiety and learning from them, because we need as many tools as possible to be able to help ourselves, especially in this day and age. So I am an anxiety therapist and I have written a book, and it's to help people break through their anxiety behaviors with many different powerful ways to do this. Now, the book is called Anxiety Hacks, and the subtitle is Proven Techniques, Tools and Tips to Calmness. So I'm very excited about this, and it is launching on the 13th of November. And so it's already launched. So that's very exciting. And what you learn in the book is all these different techniques and different ways to be able to cope with your anxiety behaviors. And some of them are really quick, some in less than 90 seconds. And then also we've got I've done a free companion course that goes with the book, which people find really helpful. So you can download and you can connect into the course. And there is a number of different downloadable tables and different areas of helpful information, which isn't so much in the book, but in the course. But then there's also bonus videos of me showing you how to do each technique to be able to sort of help you through so you fully understand the techniques. So then you can really benefit from them because they're fantastic. So I'm very excited about this book. So if you're interested, if you hop on to Amazon and put Anxiety Hacks in, you'll be able to find the book. So now let me tell you about our guest, our fabulous guest even today. Our guest is the amazing Debbie Sarafim. Now, Debbie's anxiety began around food and body. And by her teen years, she had developed an eating disorder. And as Debbie moved past her eating disorder, her anxiety took on new forms. Now, Debbie is a body relationship coach, and she helps women and teens and tweens make peace with their bodies, which I think many of us, many people could hugely benefit from Debbie's help. And what they do is she helps them to build up their immunity to diet culture, because a lot of us are sort of engulfed in those habits and patterns and of diet cultures. So she does this both in a one-to-one group coaching session. So she does it either one-to-one or group coaching sessions. So Debbie, well, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kate, for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I can't wait to talk about my anxiety. That sounds really, really fun. Let's just relive every moment, every horrible moment of it. But it's funny because even just listening to you, now I'm able to talk about these things with a smile on my face. Yeah. But I just sort of want to say that I want to normalize the fact that recovering from anxiety, from an eating disorder, from whatever it is that you're going through, recovering from it lets you talk about it with a smile on your face, but it doesn't mean you're always smiling. I think like that's a myth, right? And I think that's this myth that, oh, if I fix this, I will always feel good. is kind of oftentimes what holds a lot of people back from believing in their recovery. Because I think that recovery, still allows room for all the feelings. So I can't tell you how many women I work with who they're doing so great. And they're like, yeah, but I didn't feel good today. And so I'm probably not doing it right. I'm like, no, you're allowed to not feel good. You're allowed to not feel good and still be doing great.
It's so important for people to hear that. We're not happy every day. Life's a roller coaster.
Yeah. So I'm just going to start the talk there. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm delighted to be here. Today is a good day because I'm talking to Kate Hudson-Hall. But yes, even at this stage in my recovery, and now that I'm helping other people, I still have days where I'm like, oh man, just breathe, get through it, go slow. Yeah. And so yeah, and it's interesting. Yeah. So there you go. Let's normalize that. Let's just normalize the fact that all feelings are in the other side of recovery. And I'm just excited to be here and have all my feelings with you, Kate.
Oh, we're excited to have you join us. So tell us about your anxiety and how you dealt with it when you had your eating disorder. Compared with how, the tools that you've learned over the years and how you do it.
I think that, so my eating my anxiety started around food. I was put on a diet at a very, very young age and sort of taught that there were good bodies and bad bodies. And so that by the time I was in high school, I was terrified of having a bad body, believed I had a bad body, and was doing all the things that I thought you needed to, you can't see in a podcast, air quotes, but all the things that I thought you needed to do to have air quote good body. And that just kind of puts you in a perpetual state of fear. I started working with a dietitian and a therapist, and very fortunately, I got rid of some of those behaviors. But the anxiety, the fear of what was going to happen to my body didn't go away. And I spent probably, I'm 42 now, and I probably spent more than 3/4 of my life sort of worried about, what is this going to do? How is this going to impact my body? And then how am I going to atone for it? And it puts you in a perpetual state of tension. And I think what I've learned now that I'm on this other side, is that when your body is in that mode of, it's really fight or flight mode. It's when your body believes it's not safe. And I believed for a very long time that I wasn't safe around food. It loses the ability to rationalize and talk yourself through things. And you start really responding to the world from a very reactionary place, one that doesn't necessarily resonate with who you are as a person, but it's really the only way you can react in that moment. And so when I started to identify that, oh, you know what, this anxious feeling, this anxiety that I have around food, that's my feeling. But again, starting to identify, oh, I'm actually safe. I'm actually safe in this moment. I just feel tight and tense. That's,
you tell yourself.
The first question I ask is, am I safe?
Right.
And I think that, because I think we're sort of programmed to assume we're not, right? And I think the anxiety really tells us, you're not safe. Whatever you are, you're not safe. Get out of the situation. You're not safe. And when you're in that state, it's really hard to rationalize. So if I can slow myself down enough to just ask the question, am I safe? It kind of like clicks a little switch where I'm like, oh wait, okay, well, what does safe mean? Am I in any physical danger? With the food, it would come to, well, I'm in fear of gaining weight. Well, would you gain weight right now? And can gaining weight actually hurt you? I know you're scared of it. I know that that's something that you've been taught you can't handle, but like, there are people in bigger bodies than you, and they're totally fine. So it kind of just sort of almost pulls me out of that reactionary state. because once I'm in that reactionary state, there's no reasoning with it, right? My heart rate's already going and you can't really talk to me. And I'm already thinking about 100 things that have nothing to do with what you're saying. But when I'm able to say, oh, wait, this feeling, this anxiety is telling me I'm not safe, but the truth, the reality of the situation is I am safe. I feel it dissipate. I don't immediately feel great. I don't immediately feel comfortable, but all of a sudden there's an awareness that if I just sit in this discomfort, I'll be okay. I don't have to react to the discomfort. I don't have to do whatever this discomfort alarm in my head is saying, do this to fix it. In my case, oftentimes it was skip a meal or go for a run or, something along those lines, but it can really be anything. My daughter struggles with OCD and her alarm goes off saying, wash your hands. And again, she gets to ask herself, am I safe? And then she's like, oh, well, is washing my hands keeping me safe in this moment? No. Okay. All right. I know that I'm compulsively feeling the need to do that, but no, I'm actually safe right now. And then we get to sort of sit in the discomfort of not reacting to the fight or flight feeling.
And how do you deal with sitting in it's turning towards that discomfort, isn't it? So how would you suggest people? So first of all, that they would have to, awareness is the first step. So recognizing this is what happens in certain situations.
Right.
And then asking themselves when they're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, myself, because that part of them is just trying to protect them, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So asking themselves, am I safe? Mm-hmm. And then that rational mind coming in and saying, well, yes, you are. You don't need to do X, Y, Z or whatever. And then it's actually sitting with those difficult, uncomfortable feelings, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that where I find my women struggle with this the most, the women that I work with, is again, and so much of it is honestly on my part just myth busting, because I do think that so many of the, I have women who when they're working with me, they message me and they're like, okay, I felt really scared. And then I asked myself, am I safe? And I'm totally safe. And so I realized that I was allowed to, a lot of times I work with food. So I knew I was okay to eat the food and I ate the food and now I'm just feeling really uncomfortable. And so I think I did something wrong. And that is not doing anything wrong. That is sitting in the discomfort. Yes. And I think, culturally, we've been taught that if you're uncomfortable, fix it. And I think that's.
And we try and run away from that feeling, don't we?
We try and run away from
do everything possible to avoid it, but by turning towards it and understanding that, because within mindfulness, there's the urge surfing where you actually sit with the difficult feeling and then that feeling is like it's like riding the waves, because it'll come up and it will get stronger, but then it will subside again and then it will go up again and then slowly it'll peter out.
But your tolerance level really builds up, right? At first you've never sat in this feeling before. You've never asked yourself before, am I safe? Acknowledged, oh wait, I actually am safe. The things that I'm doing to make myself feel safe are not what's keeping me safe. I'm safe in this moment right now. And then just sort of sitting in that awareness, we've never done that before. And so it's really, really, really unsettling. And there's a really good chance you're going to think you're doing it wrong. What I encourage with the women that I work with are to find little ways to challenge yourself when you're not in that hyper fight or flight mode state, when you're not already in that reactionary state. What are ways that you can challenge yourself to be uncomfortable while holding the awareness that you're safe? And we've done this a few times. I've done a few sessions with my private community where we all, we're all on Zoom. But I say, wear something that you feel self-conscious in. And we're not going to see it. We only see each other from like the chest up. I have no idea what you're wearing and it doesn't matter, right? Yeah. I just know whatever you're wearing, you're uncomfortable in. And so we've come and we sit together for an hour and everybody's wearing something different. There's a couple women wore bathing suits, one wore a sports bra, one wore like little booty shorts that she's self-conscious in. And again, I didn't see any of these women's bodies and it didn't matter. We sat and it was so interesting to see, even just sitting there, knowing we're the only ones who can see what we look like. But like that feeling initially started, and we explored it together. And I was like, okay, how's everybody feeling? Is there a feeling like, I know I was wearing a bathing suit, and there's just sort of like a feeling of like, I should cross my arms a little bit. It's just sort of, I've been programmed to do it. And so I acknowledged it, and we sat there together. And it was interesting because we had a shared experience where we were all uncomfortable, but then like probably right around 15 minutes in, it started to feel very easy. And it was almost funny. It was almost like we were able to share the experience of like, can you believe that we almost didn't come to this session because we were going to be uncomfortable, and this isn't that bad. I had a couple women even wore what they were wearing. They committed to wearing it for the rest of the day. They weren't leaving the house, but they committed to wearing it for the rest of the day. Ways that we can challenge ourselves to be uncomfortable and safe. And some of these things can be done in the privacy of your own home. You know, if wearing a bathing suit makes you uncomfortable, put it on to cook dinner. Right? Nobody's going to see it. You don't have to wait till your whole family's home. Or, I sometimes put on, I don't like wearing just a sports bra. I really like wearing a shirt over a sports bra. It's not that I can't show the other part. It's just, I'm more comfortable in a shirt, but I like to remind myself, because I hear, as soon as I say that, I hear the rule in my head go, well, you're 42 and nobody needs. So sometimes, which is bull, but like sometimes I just wear a sports bra around the house just to remind myself that like, hey, this is something you are capable of doing. If we can practice recognizing, holding a space for the fact that we're safe while feeling uncomfortable, that's really a muscle we can start to exercise, right? And then we can take it out in other situations. So it's been interesting because we started with wearing something that made us uncomfortable there. And then like I said, I committed to wearing it a couple more times. And now there are a couple of dresses that I feel self-conscious in. I remember buying them saying, you're going to feel self-conscious. This is a tight dress. You feel self-conscious in tight dresses. And today you're having a good enough body image day that you can look at it and go, this looks good. I want to wear this. But you may not have that next time, because body image really has nothing to do with how you look. But I want you to remember it right now. And then we're going to practice wearing a dress that you're kind of self-conscious in, knowing that you're okay. And the first time I did it was really hard. I wore it to go pick my kids up from school, and I was positive that everybody was going to be looking at me. And then again, I got to ask myself, I got to ask myself, am I safe, as I picked the kids up? And I was. And now wearing that dress has gotten easier and easier. And so now I wear it kind of regularly. And now I feel uncomfortable for like 3 or 4 minutes when I put it on, and then I'm fine. And so these are little ways that we can start to practice making a space in a very, very, very safe way, in a way where nothing can happen, right? We know nothing can happen. Even if feelings come up, even if putting something on that makes us uncomfortable makes us have to hold a space for the part of us that is sad about the way we look or about the way the world is, we can have those feelings in the safety of our own home. Know that those feelings, nobody's watching us have them. Nobody's judging them. Nothing can happen. We can have those feelings. Those feelings can move on, and then we don't have to react. And I think anxiety is the compulsion to react. And so if you can learn that you're safe without reacting, then ultimately you can kind of get yourself through almost anything,
Yeah. So if anybody's interested in my book, in Anxiety Hacks, I have the steps that take you through the urge surfing. And so you can learn to do that by turning towards those difficult feelings. There's gradual steps to be able to educate yourself how to do that. And then the more that you can do it, the stronger you become.
Mm-hmm. It's true. I always say, I say over and over again, there's power in learning to sit in your discomfort. If you can sit, I think back to, I want to say my childhood, but really it was so much more than just my childhood. It was my childhood into my teen years, into my 20s, into my 30s. And I think of all the extra things I put in my life in order to avoid feeling uncomfortable. And it was so much time and so much energy. And honestly, so many of those things pulled me out of what could have been really beautiful moments, because I don't have time to concentrate on the moment. I've got to do this other thing to avoid it. And life is so much more full when you are allowed to feel the less than ideal parts of it without it being a deal breaker, essentially.
And of course, the huge anxiety.
Yeah.
And so Debbie, so tell me, what other ways have you learned over the years to be able to calm your anxiety?
So, I mean, I have different techniques. I have different techniques that I use. And, you know, again, where I tend to focus a lot of my work is around how we're taking care of ourselves between food and exercise. So one of the things that I do, you know, there's a lot of, I've had a lot of anxiety around exercise in the past, again, especially having an eating disorder, this compulsion to, like, if I don't move, I'm bad. And what counts as exercise? And that wasn't enough exercise because I wasn't sweating enough, or my heart rate wasn't up enough. Or my work has been in identifying those feelings. And when I work in my community, I do it out loud and live and in the moment. So as I'm moving, I'm saying, wow, there's a part of me that feels like this move doesn't count because I'm watching someone do, you know, I teach movement classes, and as we're doing a move, I'll be like, I'm watching someone do this, and it in my head, it looks like they're having an easier time of it than I am. And so then it makes me kind of think, oh, does this move count? Or, and just sort of bringing, again, awareness to it and not needing to fix any of it. But, you know, I think there are ways that you can talk back, you know, that doesn't necessarily have to be taking an exercise class and doing the opposite of what the teacher's saying. You can ask yourself if there's something that if there's something that somebody offers or suggests that you do, and you say no without even thinking about it. I think a way that you can honestly talk back is to give yourself the space to think about it, right? Like, for 4 years, the answer was, if the question was, do you want dessert? The answer was, no, I don't want dessert. Oh, okay. That's a very fast. Are you sure you don't want dessert? So again, to me, dessert meant unsafe. Before I was ready to start eating dessert, I needed to start giving myself enough time to actually ask the question, do I want dessert tonight? Like, even just giving myself the space to, okay, do I actually want dessert tonight? So, so creating the space, asking sort of follow-up questions. If you hear yourself saying yes or no to something so quickly that you don't know how you got to that answer, get curious about, wait, where did that come from? I said that before I even, like, if I do want dessert, what is, like, what is it about tonight that's okay for me to want dessert? And why is tonight acceptable? And why are other nights that I'm not willing to even think about it? And just really starting to learn how to ask the questions, to get curious. Because I think, again, you know, anxiety is us in a fight or flight mode. And when we're in fight or flight mode, we're not thinking things through. We are reacting. And so the antidote is to create the space to think things through, to almost put yourself in a position where you can't not think it through, right? You have to ask, if the question is not, if the question is, do I want dessert tonight? And it's very quickly no, then ask a follow-up question. Why? Well, I feel like I shouldn't. Why do you feel like you shouldn't? Well, and again, just keep digging. And eventually it comes to the question of, are you safe? Right? Yeah. I don't want to say because I mean, are you safe?
So Debbie, but that's, you know, similar to, say, if somebody has huge anxiety about going to a party, and they were invited to a party, and immediately they would say, no, I can't, you know, sorry, can't come.
Yeah.
You know, without even actually thinking about it. So starting to question themselves, and then question, and then eventually get down to, would I, am I safe?
Am I
Would
safe
be
at this
safe
party?
if I went to that party? Well, you more than likely would be safe.
Yeah. Now, I mean, unless it's like a knife throwing party or, something really dangerous.
Absolutely.
But again, give yourself the space to ask the question. Now, then I want to come back to what I said in the very beginning of our conversation of let's dispel the myth that talking back to your anxiety feels good. So you ask yourself, do I want to go to a party? No, wait, you keep digging and you get to the point of, would I be safe at this party? Actually, I would. Okay. So maybe you decide to give it a try. Now, you don't have to like it, right? Let's dispel the myth that deciding that you're safe means you're going to go there and be like, hey, and everybody's going to be like, let's get this girl a drink and like chairlift and the whole sort of thing. Like, you don't then have to be the life of the party. You are allowed to go there and be like, I'm really uncomfortable. I'm in a party. Like, yeah. I'm not super comfortable at parties. Again, I believe that if you allow yourself to have the experience without trying to fix it, right? That I think you're going to have a very similar experience to the experience I had with my women in my community, where we all wore uncomfortable outfits, where it was really uncomfortable for a little while. And then all of a sudden we were like, it's not that uncomfortable anymore.
Yes.
But try not to solve the discomfort. The discomfort in anxiety can actually be your friend. If you're trying to solve it, you are, again, in that reactive state. And if you just let it be there, think about, how can I make this discomfort as comfortable as possible? Like, if this discomfort were a character with you, how would I like give this discomfort like a shoulder rub while trying to calm it down on the couch, right? Like, if you can do that and just sort of say, hey, we're in this one together, then there is relief. You just got to sit through it. And then I want to say, with that, I still have moments where I find myself in that panicked state, because that's the thing about anxiety is, again, you don't have to notice yourself getting there. Once you're there, it's so again, I want to just sort of dispel the myth that even if you're in a place where you're fairly good with your anxiety, it doesn't mean you won't find yourself caught in it again. I had a very anxious episode this last week where I couldn't break down the steps as to how I got there. It was very, I felt very almost violated by it, because I think I was triggered after a conversation with a friend. I felt fine in the conversation. I felt a little uncomfortable post-conversation, but I talked myself through. I woke up in the middle of the night with nightmares. And then the next day I was in this I was crying and I couldn't really focus. And it was it. I was in that heightened state. And I was really pissed. I didn't know how I got there. I know that I teach all the things to not get there.
So did you backtrack?
I did. I backtracked. And honestly, more than figuring out what the trigger was, I needed to give myself the space to identify, oh, I was triggered and I'm already in that hyperreactive state. Because I wanted to fix the hyperreactive state. Again, once I was in there, I was like, how do I get out of this? I'm crying. I can't think straight. And I needed to just sort of acknowledge, oh, I'm reactionary. I was traumatized. And it got me. I was there. I can't fix this. I just have to sit in it. And as soon as I acknowledged it, it got a little bit better. And then it passed. It didn't get completely better, 100% immediately, but it got better. And then within an hour, I was like, oh, and I was sort of back to my old self. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how far into it I was. Cause I do believe like something happened when I was sleeping, which sounds so fun, but like something was going on subconsciously. So I didn't have the normal space I have to ask the tools, but guess what? That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with me. Once you're in that reactive state, your thought process is fix. And if you can release the fix, right? If you could say, no, don't fix, just hold still. Just to hold still, there is relief on the other side. There really is.
Yeah, that's a very good example, isn't it? Because sometimes, you're feeling really positive, and then all of a sudden you think out of nowhere you're just sort of engulfed in the anxiety. But then if you were to backtrack and think about specifically what you were thinking, or what somebody had said to you, or figuring out what the trigger or triggers were, and then you can understand for the future, but also stay with that feeling. And then
the hardest part is staying with the feeling. I mean, it's the hardest part. It's also kind of amazing when you do it for the first time, the relief that you feel. And then you're like, I can't believe I've never done this before. Like, it's that. It is literally, it's a mind-blowing experience, because it's so simple. It's just like the solution is to not solve it. It's so freeing. And then you can ask yourself, and I often do, where am I then bringing anxiety to situations that anxiety doesn't have to be there? Where am I holding an expectation that puts me sort of in that heightened state? And I'll give an example. And I'm very glad my parents don't listen to anything that I do, because when I go visit my parents are really triggering. They're great. I'm still in contact with them. My kids love grandma and grandpa, and all I have to do is be near my parents for like 2 or 3 seconds, and I can feel the muscles in my body get tighter, and I feel like I got to be ready for anything that grandma might say, and I got to be ready to fix it. And that's sort of my perpetual state. And it dawned on me that put me in this reactionary state. And I didn't want my kids to always see me yelling at my parents, especially when like half the time they deserved it, but half the time they kind of didn't. And I was in this reactionary state. So I asked myself, what am I holding on to that might make this anxiety harder for me to release? And I realized that I was holding on to the expectation that whenever I see my parents, I want it to be a good trip. I really want it to be a good visit with my parents. And what does good even mean, right? Like, and so, but there's this tight expectation, so that anytime anything felt not good, and there's a lot of room when the expectation is good, there's a lot of room for things to feel not good. Anytime anything would feel not good, my body would tense, and I'd go into that anxious state of fix. And so then I got to ask myself, what's something I can do when visiting my family that can help me release that? And so I've identified, I want to take the expectation of it being a good trip off the table. Doesn't mean I want to have a bad trip. It just means I don't even know what a good trip is.
You haven't got that added pressure. Yeah,
I haven't got the added pressure. Now, I still find some of the stuff that my parents do to be triggering, but I'm coming in with the expectation of this is going to be uncomfortable. Like being around my parents for an extended period of time, despite loving them, is uncomfortable. If I don't have to fix that discomfort, then I can hang out with my parents. We can go on trips together. My kids can experience grandma and grandpa in a whole new way, because the problem doesn't have to be, well, mommy's uncomfortable and we need to fix it. And so I have been acknowledging that these might not be good trips. And because they haven't all had to be good, they've been some pretty amazing trips with some very varied moments, right? There are some really beautiful moments, and then some moments where I'm like, this is so bad. But I can sit through all of it because I practice sitting in my discomfort in ways that feel much safer than being around my parents. My parents are sort of like the advanced course for me, right? Like I feel less safe, which is such a shame thing to say, but I think so many of us do feel that way around triggers, and family can be so triggering, right? And if we ask ourselves, am I safe? And I'm not safe around my mom because she could say anything. Actually, you might be safe around your mom. What if your mom could say anything and it could make you upset, and you didn't have to fix being upset? Again, where I got caught with some of this stuff is that my mom would say something and it would make me upset. And I was like, I can't feel upset. This needs to be a good trip. what if I'm allowed to be upset? And again, there's that power of sitting in your discomfort. I mean, it's so interesting because, I come at it from a relationship with your body and food and exercise, but really it is anxiety. It is, how do you approach life? Yeah. How is it okay for you to show up in the world, and just sort of accept the fact that, yeah, this might not feel good, but not feeling good doesn't have to mean it's bad, right? And so that is where making peace with the anxiety within you can take you, as it can take you kind of anywhere. It really opens you up.
Yeah. Gosh, that's so interesting. And, and I think what you said about your parents, I think so many people do have difficulties with their parents. But, if they can learn from Debbie here, is to, to look at it in a different viewpoint and sit with that discomfort and turn towards it and sit with it. And it will, like we said in the beginning, it will, it will be like those waves, and it'll rise up and then it'll go down and then it'll rear up again.
And I still fight with my parents, just to be really, really clear. I still have fights with my parents. We still have stuff, but I no longer am worried that fight will be the last fight, or the fight that breaks us, or the reason we can't do anything anymore. Right. Yeah. I have more understanding and more compassion and empathy for those fights. More like, when I fight with my husband, man, I just sound like a person who fights now. I've really turned myself into a fighter. But when my husband and I, get into a disagreement, it feels very safe there, right? Like, I'm not worried that my husband is gonna do. It's a different, and when I remember that safety exists, because I recognize that it exists, right? The difference isn't that, it is, the difference is that it's my husband, but the true difference is how I'm relating to that, right? And so, so if you make peace with your anxiety, you can fight with your husband and parents just like I do. So there you go. What a pitch! What a pitch to get over anxiety. But again, like, what if you had the freedom to combat some of the things that you find the most challenging, and know that feeling uncomfortable around them doesn't mean you're doing it wrong, or that you have to back down? What if you're just allowed to do that? What does that open you up to that you're not currently opened up to?
That's very good learning for us all to turn toward and ask ourselves, so what if, what if you would allow yourself? And sitting with those difficult thoughts and feelings, or whatever they meant, whatever they might be. Yeah. So brilliant, Debbie. Oh gosh, thank you so much.
Oh, well, this is always, I have to say, Kate, talking to you is always such a pleasure and such a journey. And I always discover new things when talking to you, which is really fun. So thank you.
Thank you for your honesty as well, and just being so open and honest with us all, because a lot of the things that you've talked about here today are things that people totally shy away from.
I agree, and I want to acknowledge that, Kate, you create a space that feels very, very safe to talk about these things. And then I want to say, not all spaces feel as safe as this, but that doesn't mean that other spaces are more dangerous, right? So you don't need to wait. If you haven't met Kate and you're just listening to her podcast, you don't need to wait to meet her and be called onto the podcast to talk about these things, right? The truth is that you have the same safety at home. But I think what makes Kate so special is that here, as I just compliment you, but I think what makes you so special is that you do create this safe space to talk about this, so that people can come in and share their perspectives. And I think that again, let's remember that the feeling that Kate creates here is safety, but the truth is that safety exists beyond these walls. So, so that you can take that and just sort of carry a little Kate with you if you feel like
Or a
talking
little
about some of
Debbie.
this stuff. There you go.
Or both of
I
us.
imagine a short one of us sitting on people's shoulders, like cheering each other on, like angel and devil.
We'll come along with you.
Exactly.
On each shoulder. Oh gosh, Debbie. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, Kate, thank you.
So
This is
much.
always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And thank you to everybody for listening. And before we go, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple iTunes so you never miss an episode. So thank you all very much for listening. And I look forward to chatting with you in the next episode.